Excellencies, distinguished representatives of Indigenous peoples, national human rights institutions, UN agencies and civil society organisations, all delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou I tēnei wā o Matariki, a greeting from Aotearoa in the time of our new year. It is a great honour for me to take the floor as the new chair of the Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. At the outset, I would like to welcome our new colleague, Ojit Mira Ojulu, to the Expert Mechanism and congratulate Cheryl Lightfoot on her reappointment, and also mihi to Cheryl for all her leadership that she has shown to us during the last 12 months. I would also like to acknowledge the continuing work of Benota Moy Damai, Antonina Gorbanova, Anexa Brenda Lee, Alfred Cunningham, and Daly Sambro DeRoe, and the work and commitment of the outgoing member, Margaret Lakawa. I take this opportunity to thank my distinguished colleagues for the trust they placed in me to serve as chairperson of the Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples this year, and I look forward to working together with all stakeholders. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the mandate of the Expert Mechanism is to give advice to the Human Rights Council and to assist member states and Indigenous peoples to realise the end of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Before continuing, I would like to recall that the United Nations promotes dialogue and exchanges between different actors with a view to promoting sustainable peace, development and human rights. All participants are encouraged to contribute to MRIP in a spirit of constructive, multi-stakeholder dialogue, keeping a focus on the theme of the discussion. The meetings of the Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, as any United Nations system events, are guided by the highest ethical and professional standards, and all the participants are expected to behave with integrity and respect towards all participants attending and involved with any meeting of the Expert Mechanism. We count on your cooperation to ensure that these standards are adhered to by all participants of the session. In this regard, we ask all participants to exercise decorum, avoid abusive or disrespectful language or derogatory or inflammatory remarks. Otherwise, they might risk permanent prohibition from attending any UN meeting in the future. Publishing, distributing, or disseminating material or information containing defamatory, abusive, or offensive language or images is not permitted on United Nations premises. Allow me to now give you some updates on the work of the Expert Mechanism over the past year. As decided during our 16th session, the Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples has undertaken a study on the Constitution, laws, legislation, policies, judicial decisions and other mechanisms through which states have taken measures to achieve the ends of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in accordance with Article 38 of the Declaration. The draft study will be discussed in depth later today. The document is available on the Expert Mechanism 17th session webpage. In November last year, the Expert Mechanism held an expert seminar on the topic to obtain substantive input into the study on this theme. This seminar brought together approximately 22 participants with expertise in this field, including members of the Expert Mechanism, practitioners from several regions, Indigenous human rights advocates, academics and OHCHR staff. The Expert Mechanism also carried out several intersessional activities, participated in international seminars, forums and consultations, and in several meetings of the Global Task Force for making the Decade of Action for Indigenous Languages. In this period, the Expert Mechanism resumed its country engagement missions. The first one was to Australia in October 2023, aimed at providing advice in relation to the contemporary removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families and communities. A second country mission was conducted in Norway in March 2024, aiming at providing technical advice on the rights of the Sami peoples with a focus on their land, territories and resources and the right of free prior and informed consent. During this year, the expert mechanism also maintained a continued coordination with the other Indigenous United Nations mechanisms, the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the UN Voluntary Fund for Indigenous Peoples, and the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, especially with the participation this year at the Permanent Forum session by the Chair and the Vice Chair during the 23rd session. The Chair also participated in the high-level panel of the commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the adoption of the outcome document of the High Plenary Meeting of the General Assembly, known as the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples. Our annual sessions are another example of cooperation between mechanisms. I'm pleased to welcome Francesco Carlese, the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Hindo Omaru Ibrahim, the Chairperson of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and Marjolaine Etienne, representing the Board of Trustees on the UN Voluntary Fund for Indigenous Peoples. In September, we held our interactive dialogue with the Human Rights Council at its 54th session, which included the presentation of our study on the impact of militarisation on the rights of Indigenous peoples. Our chair also served as a panellist to the Human Rights Council half-day discussion on the impact of certain development projects on the rights of Indigenous peoples, in particular the impact on Indigenous women. I would like to now turn to this week's agenda. Once we have completed our opening formalities, the expert mechanism and all participants will spend part of the day discussing our study on constitutions, laws, legislation, policies, judicial decisions and other mechanisms through which states have taken measures to achieve the ends of the Declaration in accordance with Article 38. We look forward to receiving your views and feedback on the draft, which we'll finalise over the course of this week before its submission to the Human Rights Council at its 57th session in September. I take this opportunity to announce that the list of speakers for the agenda item is now open and will remain open until 1 p.m. this afternoon. This item will also continue on Thursday morning. One of the highlights of this 17th session will be the panel discussion on the rights of Indigenous peoples in post-conflict situations and peace negotiations, agreement and accords this afternoon under item 8. The list of speakers for this agenda item will open for 2 hours from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. and from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. today. 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Tomorrow morning we'll address the expert mechanism's country engagement work under item 7, item 6. Representatives from member states and Indigenous peoples from the most recent country engagement missions will participate in the discussions. The list of speakers for this item will open from 1600 hours to 1800 hours. In the afternoon, under item 5, we will hold an interactive dialogue with the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the Chair of the Permanent Forum, and the representative of the Board of Trustees on the UN Voluntary Fund for Indigenous Peoples and members of the Human Rights Committee. We are very pleased to welcome members of the treaty bodies as we continue strengthening our cooperation with other human rights mechanisms. We look forward to a rich dialogue with all of them. The list of speakers for this item will open tomorrow for 2 hours between 1000 hours and 1200 hours. On Wednesday morning from 10 to 11, the expert mechanism will hold a closed-door meeting to discuss proposals to be submitted to the Human Rights Council. Following this meeting, we'll open the discussion on the work of the expert mechanism, including the focus on future thematic studies. In this 17th session, we will continue the discussions on enhancing participation of Indigenous peoples in the United Nations, following our proposal regarding further efforts to facilitate the participation of Indigenous peoples' representatives and institutions in the work of the Human Rights Council. On Thursday morning, we will continue the discussion on the 2024 study. Then we will hold a discussion on the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, focusing on stock-taking the progress on implementing the global action plan of the decade, as well as the national and local action plans. In the afternoon of Thursday, we will host a private coordination meeting among UN Indigenous rights mechanisms to coordinate our work and plan joint initiatives for the period 2024 to 2025. We will close this fourth day with a discussion on the proposals of the expert mechanism to be made to the Human Rights Council for their consideration in their September session. The morning of our last day of the session, the expert mechanism will hold a closed-door meeting to discuss the session, report and proposals. Following this meeting, we will resume the private coordination meeting among UN Indigenous rights mechanisms. We will end the session with the adoption of the 2024 study and advice and the annual report on the expert mechanism's work, including its 17th session, which will be submitted to the Human Rights Council for consideration at their 57th session of the Council in September. In addition, there is a rich program of side events which will all be held in person, and we encourage you all to attend these rich and fruitful events that are held each year. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those who have contributed to the work of the expert mechanism in the past year. In particular, I thank the UN Voluntary Fund for Indigenous Peoples and those member states who have made contributions. The fund has made it possible for 28 Indigenous representatives from all regions of the world to attend this year's session. I would like to acknowledge and extend a warm welcome to the 48 Indigenous Fellows from 34 countries who are participating in the OHCHR Indigenous Fellowship Program. We would like to acknowledge and extend our gratitude to Indigenous Peoples Centre for Documentation, Research and Information, or colloquially known as DOSIP, for their invaluable contribution and support in facilitating the participation of Indigenous peoples in our sessions every year. We also extend our gratitude to all member states, Indigenous peoples organisations and representative bodies and national human rights institutions, academia and Indigenous experts that contributed to our studies and our reports, as well as those who have undertaken an active interest in the implementation of our expanded mandate. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the role of the Indigenous Peoples and Minorities section of the OHCHR in supporting our work. In closing, I would like to welcome all of you to the 17th session of the Expert Mechanism. On behalf of my colleagues, I invite you to participate in the discussion and make your contributions, knowing we are very, very pleased in what you have to share and very interested. Your contributions and views are the basis of our work towards advancing the human rights of Indigenous peoples. Kindly ensure that your contributions this week are linked to our working program themes. Our common goal is the full realisation of the Declaration and all relevant human rights instruments that point to the enjoyment of Indigenous peoples of their collective and individual rights. Thank you.